The printing press happens to be in South Korea right now because we can't afford to do it in the United States any longer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Let's come back to both the book and that part of the film that I didn't see, which is about this notion of transformation. We bandy about words like waking up and increasing consciousness and things like that. And, of course, the classical Indian way of kind of increasing awareness and attaining some higher level of spiritual reality is through disillusionment. It's a very unpretty way to attain consciousness. We like to think that's kind of a clean and pretty path, that if we just do yoga and meditate and do right things, certain nice things will happen inside of us. But what's actually happening is there is a disintegrating, quite literally, of our perspective, our program, our understanding, our conditioning, really, of reality. So when you use these words relative to the notion of global transformation and 2012 being the symbol of that, what do you mean?
Yeah, actually, I totally sympathize and basically agree with the Vedanta perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That basically there's kind of like one consciousness that's playing, games with itself that kind of creates these little embodiments, and that, as long as we're identifying with our own ego or with our own story, we're kind of missing the point, and that,
mm-hmm.
and that really, they're as like Ramesh or the Nisargadatta talk about, there really is no
Advaita teachers.
It's hard to find any kind of free will on the level of our ego-based existence, but you can switch your identification to that consciousness that manifests throughout all of us. Now, having said that, I do feel that that the sort of Eastern kind of cyclical perspective and the Western evolutionary perspective can be kind of merged. Mm-hmm. And I feel that's what the Theosophists were doing, but even more effectively somebody like Rudolf Steiner was doing. And I think in that sense there is an evolution taking place. And even though, it's ultimately maybe feedback loops of this consciousness playing with itself, we have things to do, and there are reasons that we've developed the capacities that we've had, both the creative capacities, the new forms of perception, new forms of understanding the world, and our technical and technological and scientific capacities. These are all aspects of our consciousness on this planet in an evolutionary process. And now I think we've reached that threshold where, as in the film, we interview at length Barbara Marx Hubbard, the futurist.
Oh, yeah,
who
sure.
came up.
I've had her on the TV show.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She has a book called Conscious Evolution, mm-hmm. and her whole thing is that we're on this cusp where we can make a choice, where we can make a kind of self-willed mutation of ourselves, where we go from unconscious to conscious choice, to conscious evolution, where evolution becomes something, she calls it the evolution of evolution. We take responsibility for what's been unleashed on the planet, and we utilize our capacities to come back into balance and to bring about a kind of next threshold of liberation.
Yes, indeed. I love that. I love Barbara and her work so much. I look forward to seeing that part of the film. Let me let everybody know that this is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World on Progressive Radio Network. And we are spending the hour speaking with the author of this book, 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl, Daniel Pinchbeck, who lives here in New York and is a well-known writer. And this book is the basis of a film called 2012, Time for Change, starring Sting, and you are also in it. You've become and morphed into
I would actually say it's
movie star.
It's starring me with Sting in it as well.
I see, right.
No,
Proper billing. Thank you.
We also interviewed David Lynch and Ellen Page and Gilberto Gil, but then it's a lot of the focus is on people like Barbara Marx Hubbard or John Todd or Paul Stamets, Bernard Lietaer. I mean, the thing that, João, the director, is Brazilian. One thing that he really brought was a focus on kind of practical solutions.
João Amorim.
Yeah, what people can do now.
Yes.
So we talk at length about permaculture, bioremediation, alternative energy systems that can be employed. We really try to offer a kind of paradigm of how this transition
a balanced
could
view.
happen.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, that underscores a point that you were really just driving at, Daniel, which is that on one hand we have the psychic level of activity that we really need to engage in to look at our past, get some sense of how in the world it is we got to where we have gotten, the mess that we have really very much created collectively at this point, and appreciating the technologies and the development of the left hemisphere as well as the right in different regions of the world, so we can become people of action. And clearly your film is enunciating that. It's not just meditating, it's not just having psychedelic experiences, but these are in a sense the inspiration toward action.
Yeah. And I would say that I see the idea of shamanic initiation as very crucial. I mean, the modern Western culture is the only culture, I think, in history that has lacked any construct of a real initiation process, which is not just a bar mitzvah, but you go out, you go through vision quest, maybe you take these psychedelics, you break through to another level of perception.
Yes.
And part of the reason for that is so that you get over the fear of death, the attachment to this body and this life. You recognize that there are all these other planes and levels happening. And so since our society doesn't do that, you have all these people who are super attached and anxious because they're only connected to this life, this experience, and therefore they can't let go of anything. And all they can see as important are material accumulation, getting a better job or whatever, but from these more like classical or traditional cultures, those things are totally worthless, essentially. I mean, they might be marks of something, but really what really matters is how you develop as a spiritual being and how your extrasensory perceptions are deepened.
Exactly.
That's really what the whole culture of the Aboriginals is about. So we've gone off on our wrong tangent, and we have to wake up and reassess this direction.
Exactly. It's lopsided, is what you're saying. And I remember you reminding me of when I had Stan Groff on the TV show some years ago, and one of the things that he was addressing was the lack of ritual, just as you were saying, a lack of ceremony. And he was working with gangs in different parts of the country because what he saw was these gangs who were going out and doing untold violence to each other and to innocent people was that they had no rites of passage to recognize and acknowledge their own development through puberty and then becoming men. And that by instituting ritual, again, it gave them a sense of anchor and root. So he was importing, if you will, the notions of the shamanic cultures, the ancient cultures, to help people pass through and acknowledge. That's such an important word that we have so little of in our society. This idea of acknowledging our chronological and, more than anything, our emotional maturation. It's just not there. So, we live in a mercantile culture. I mean, my old teacher of neurolinguistic programming, Richard Bandler, used to say, this country was started by criminals and it's still being run by criminals. And, it's funny, but it's tragic because it's true. And or by religious fanatics. And if you really have the same profile as we had 235 some odd years ago, it's really not different enough for saying that a human society is evolving. And we're learning the hard way, as we were kind of just saying, through disillusionment. People are learning the emptiness of just a commercial interpretation of reality, just a material interpretation, because it's falling apart. It's failing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have anything enduring.
Yeah, I did want to mention, as part of what we're doing with Reality Sandwich and Evolver, we've started to do some retreats. So actually from August 14th to 22nd, we're doing a retreat in Costa Rica with two amazing shamans who I've worked with a number of times who use ayahuasca in their ceremonies. So if people are interested in having a really great opportunity to explore this in a context where it's beautiful landscape, amazing shamans, the information is on our website, realitysandwich.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's take a moment and talk about would you, to some of our listeners who may not really understand what ayahuasca is, as well as, number one, phenomenologically, as well as, let's say, historically?
Well, ayahuasca is used by tribal groups throughout the Amazon basin, from Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and so on. It's a brew. It's a drink. It's made of two plants that are brewed together. One is the ayahuasca vine, Banisteriopsis